The Ches-A-Kee Men by Jerry Wagner, published in the Sunrise Side Historical Bulletin, October, November, December of 1995, which was published by Dennis Morrison and Treasure Cove Publications. The Ches-A-Kee Men. Our destination was an old building site people of the King's Corner settlement called Joe's Place. Here lay the charred and scattered remains of an old log building long ago burned to the ground. It was a pleasant midsummer evening. We walked through the small orchard by the blackened timbers, some 40 of us, a mixture of Indians and whites, following an ancient path through the Michigan woodlands, scarred deep by footsteps and passing time. Halting at last, we formed a circle around a conical structure of poles and bark some 7 feet tall called a pine swagamak, as a young Ches-A-Kee man entered and dropped to his knees. We waited a few moments, but nothing happened. It should have begun shaking the moment he entered. An Indian onlooker muttered somewhat disappointedly. Others, both Indians and whites, laughed rather loudly, as if to say the whole affair was nothing but foolishness. Many in this crowd were Christian Indians and felt what we were doing was wrong and should not be taking place at all. Many whites did not believe in the spiritual power of the Indians, but had come with camera and notebook anyway to record the proceedings, if only for the amusement of all. The young man that had entered the picturesque but crudely made lodge, looking not unlike a teepee but smaller, was in his mid-20s and was visiting the King's Corner Indian settlement along with his father and elder uncle from the Bereans River area of Upper Canada. Tall and well-structured, the young man possessed graceful movement, so characteristic of the Indian people. His father was rather fat, however, and sat cross-legged in the grass, his round face showing no emotion. The final Bereans River Indian, the young man's uncle, was in advanced age, slow and weak in his movement, with long white hair and deep creases in his leathery face and neck. He was a man of mystery. There were many things intriguing about him, among which he spoke. His mind was razor sharp for his age, and he seemed to intuitively know what we were thinking, often answering our questions before they were even asked. It happened too many times to just be chance. This fact had become readily apparent when we conversed at length the following day. He was a Ches-A-Kee man, but for him no longer would the Powaganak come. The powers are like a brightly burning fire at first. Then the fire grows dim with age. Finally, the Powaganak will not come, he said. He was against his nephew trying to call the spirits, feeling his nephew was not a real Ches-A-Kee man. The young man had never had the sequence of dream revelations that was necessary to make him a conjurer. For the old white-haired man, hobbling down the crooked trail, nothing was right about this, and he had stopped several times, stating that he wished to go back to Alfred's, the place where they were staying, and to begin the long journey back to his northern homeland. But the enthusiasts in the crowd had moved him onward. Now very soon the ancient form of American Indian religion called conjuring would be taking place. Documents from the 18th and 19th century were so convincing to us as to the manifestation of supernatural forces within the Conjuring Lodge. The events to happen or not to happen within the next few hours would shed some light on this. The event would take place with no good background knowledge about the mechanics of conjuring, for the old Ches-A-Kee man, with the Anglo name of Simon Felix and the Indian name of Strikes the Point, had told about his lifetime of conjuring, of being directly in touch with the spirits during our long talk together. I learned of Micanac, of Pineswack, and at least 30 more of these ghost helpers of the American Indian from this kind old man. It was years ago, he said, when we roamed the woods talking, that, and old and wise even then, he became a living link to the past. When he related the experiences of his own childhood in regards to the Ches-A-Kee men, he knew it took me back actually into the original religious world of the Indian before their lifestyles and beliefs were forever altered by the coming of the Europeans. I made the very most of our encounter. He told me, "It is not wrong for me to tell you everything about us. You are sincere, and you should be told, so you can tell others." There have been few great Ches-A-Kee men in our history. The population of our people at any given time has been small, and few are chosen by the spirit of the conjuring to perform. There have been bad Ches-A-Kee men, not so good ones, and there have been impostors, he said. Put it all down on your paper so all people will know what we once were. He continued, "As the professional white men claim, we are shamanists. This is true. But we are not ordinary shamans. Our extra powers to secure news about people who are hundreds of miles away, learn of events taking part in other parts of the country, know what will happen in the future, recover lost or stolen articles, tell hunters where the animal food is, abduct souls, cause sickness, mental disorder, and death, sets us apart from other types of medicine men." Again he continued, "The professional white men who long ago came to our village to study us says most of our characteristic function is seership or clairvoyance. You know, they are probably right in their interpretation of us and our powers, but the words they use are not our words. What I'm telling you is in our words, from the Indian mind and the Indian heart. We look the same as other Indians. There's no difference in our bodies, but our minds, they are different. Our ability to conjure is acquired by receiving certain powers, which come in dreams while we are very young. 4 dreams within a brief period of time, say 3 weeks, creates the best Ches-A-Kee men. Most have fewer dreams than this. The professional whites say a supernatural revelation occurs in certain select Indians. This is probably true. No one can predict who will become a Ches-A-Kee man. No one can teach another to conjure. The best of Ches-A-Kee men have had their first dream at about 2 years of age." He continued on, "I acquired the powers early. I was no more than 6 or 7 years old. Even before entering the shaking lodge with my grandfather, who was the greatest of Ches-A-Kee men, several Wagner already had come to me, but I didn't know what they were. Though it was in the dead of winter, my body was wet with sweat. I remember my legs jerking wildly. It was night, and the fires in our stoves were burned down. To ward off the gathering cold, I remember pulling my Hudson's Bay blanket around me more snugly, when there on the edge of my blanket before my eyes danced 4 tiny little human-like creatures. I remember thinking that they resembled sparks from burning tamarack wood. So bright were these brilliant little spark creatures that I could not long look directly at them. It was very strange, but I wasn't afraid. It was a real dream, and I seemed to know beyond all doubt that an important thing was happening to me. Then they were gone. The following day my father told my grandfather what had happened to me. My grandfather promised then that I would soon be taken into the shaking lodge with him to see the spirits." He continued on, "Not long after, my grandfather was called to conjure by our people. A shirt, some teas, and a box of buttons were placed before him. He stared intently for a few moments, then picked up the items. The people knew then that he would conjure. It is always done that way. When the evening to conjure arrived, my grandfather instructed my father to bring me to the lodge and let me look inside. My father did so, thrust me inside the strange dwelling. My grandfather was kneeling on the boughs, and the conjuring ceremony was in full swing, with the lodge vibrating and shimmering. There is a great wind within the lodge, making me scared, and my eyes water. I was in my father's arms, thrust forward through the lodge opening with my face upward. It was another world in there. My young mind readily grasped a world that was within a world. Above my grandfather, near the top of the lodge, were the strange little creatures I had seen. They swirled like bees, tiny brilliant sparks with peculiar shapes, ever changing, sometimes human-like, sometimes animal-like. Whistling sounds filled the lodge, sounds like the human voice but shriller. Sounds like rabbits squealing, crows cawing, deer snorting, sounds of thunderstorms, of 4 winds. The following day, my grandfather asked if his Pawaganic were what I had seen that night on the edge of my wool blanket. I told him that they were what I had seen. He said that I would have special powers when I grew up. He became stern, and he instructed me to never play at conjuring and never to make a play lodge to conjure in. Children were never to mimic the activities of the Ches-A-Kee men. The old Indian continued talking to me, and he said, "The years passed, and I obeyed him, never conjuring until I became a man. With fair results, I helped the people of our village find food, cured many of the diseases that afflicted them, helped them find lost items, and I predicted that individual futures for many of them. But I was not regarded as a good Ches-A-Kee man. The highlight of those first years, as I remember them now, in the dimness of fading memory, was when Ches-A-Kee came to me. This is the master of conjuring, and is also known by my people as Ches-A-Kee. It was a great event, for it meant that I would become the best of Ches-A-Kee men. Yet it was only through my grandfather's death that I felt the real power come to me. Always remember, conjuring is the gift of the thunder god, and the home of the master is located in the west, where the sun goes down. With my grandfather's passing, many of his Pawaganic came to me and stayed with me. The new ones came, and my old ones doubled in power. They came out of the west, from the home of the Pinesweck, the Thunderbird, and all came down the pathway of the souls. Remember, too, that is the same path my grandfather used when he died and went to the land of the souls. He stopped talking for a minute, and we sat among the green cedars by the little creek known as Rattlesnake, with a soft wind bringing the sweet smell of the summer forest to us. The old man's eyes were watery and red. His speech was slow and strained, but he continued, his thoughts flowing gently like the clear water beside us. He began, "It is not a good time for the Indians now. They lose power in the old ways. They do not believe as strongly or go through the necessary trials. The spirits lose faith in us. Even now as we talk, my nephew who will conjure tomorrow drinks beer and wine at Alfred's. It is wrong to take the powers so lightly." When Indians had control of their lives, in the long ago, even the lodgepoles were selected for the shaking lodge were important. The master conjuring, Ches-A-Kee, instructs each new conjurer when and how to construct the lodge. Methods vary with the Ches-A-Kee men, but my lodge had to have 7 poles of 7 species of tree: birch, ash, maple, oak, cedar, pine, and spruce. Nothing was accomplished haphazardly. Everything was done as prescribed by the master spirit of conjuring. Remember, in knowing about Indians, everything has a master for the species. Make no mistake, there also is a master for every group of non-living things, such as rocks. And above all, these in power and importance is the greatest creator who no one has seen, but who all must answer to. He continued, "Always the bottom of the shaking lodge was covered with fresh-cut spruce boughs. The side of my lodge was covered loosely with birch bark or reed mats. The covering material was not solidly applied or overlapped to shed the weather like a regular teepee home. From outside the people could see inside through the cracks, hear the voices of the spirits, and often see them. No Ches-A-Kee man ever built his own lodge. 2 men, no more than 3, had to do this job for him. The lodge had to be built before sundown. Conjuring was always done in the evening. Once used, the lodge was taken down and could never be used again. A hole was dug, and all things were buried. My clothes had to be cleaned before and after conjuring. The lodge had to be built on a clean spot of ground where no one had even spit, and where no village dogs had urinated or defecated. Before conjuring, I would circle the lodge clockwise, feeling the force of the spirits, letting them know that I was ready. Then I would enter my lodge, and it would begin to shake, slowly at first, then more violently, with up to 3 feet gyrations at the top, when all my Pawaganic were present. Mickenak, the turtle, is the chief spirit of the shaking lodge for all Ches-A-Kee men, and is directly responsible to the Great Spirit. Mickenak is a messenger in all performances, and also interprets for some Pawaganic, who often speak in languages that we don't know. The best Ches-A-Kee men can bring 32 Pawaganic into the shaking lodge. 5 are part animal, part human forms, which the professional white men call anthropomorphic. 4 are miniature humanoids, one which is Wendigo, who can be conjured into a giant by some Ches-A-Kee men. The others, the greatest number, are masters of the animal species, which number 23. It must be remembered, Pawaganic do not look exactly human. Also, animal master Pawaganic do not look exactly animal. In the shaking lodge, only Mickenak, The turtle spirit came low, down by my body, sometimes touching the boughs I knelt on. All other polyganics stayed near the top of the lodge, where the whirlwinds made humming sounds. Some sat upon the lodge hoops. All were like brilliant sparks, as I mentioned before. Ches-A-Kee men cannot perform too frequently. Conjuring cannot be done for fun. There must be a real need. Often, conjuring ordeal is too exhausting. The helping spirits disturbed too greatly the Ches-A-Kee man's soul. Other than being liked and respected by the people, there is no gain for us. Ches-A-Kee men are the poorest in the tribe. We do not do it for gain, though we do receive things. The people come to us in times of great need, sick, disturbed, afraid. They lay a few things before us, some tea or coffee, maybe a shirt. If the Ches-A-Kee man picks up the offering, it means he will conjure. We receive little of personal value for ourselves from conjuring. Our prestige value is strong. We are respected and highly regarded. Put it all down on paper, for our truth must be recorded, so whites will know. The spirits speak directly to the conjurer or in his presence, never to him. This is the very oldest form of conjuring. It is the true form. The new form of conjuring, speaking through the conjurer, is not as old, nor is it as good. This form is where much fakery exists. People laugh and scoff when they see a fake conjurer perform this way, and do not believe any conjurer has the power to summon spirits. He continued on, we never go into trances or slip into states of ecstasy like some say and write about us. The white professionals called anthropologists say that conjuring is nearly absent in New England. This is true, for only the Cree Ojibwa are the Ches-A-Kee men. Outside of what is known as the woodland area, the shaking tent is performed only by the Plains Cree and Cheyenne, and they knew about it from us, through marriage and by being prisoner taken during warfare. Women seldom become conjurers. Men are the true link between the spirit world and this one. Women having this exceptional supernatural gift may conjure, however, following their final moon teepee visit, which is menopause, for they are more men then. Blue-robed Clud woman was an excellent conjurer from the Lake Superior country. My grandfather spoke of her and her great powers, and of her personally, with great admiration and deep affection. Animal-human metamorphosis, transmigration, reincarnation are some of the terms attributed to what we do by professional white men who came and studied us. It is their words, but it is fair to say the way they describe the results from our powers is accurate. Unfortunately, the narrative ends there. There are pages missing. There was more to tell. But what has been preserved here shows an aspect of the Native American life that few really know about. It was a rare experience when the elderly Indian gentleman, the Ches-A-Kee man, spoke to Jerry Wagner and related these things to him. Jerry was trusted by the people, and they shared many secrets with him. Thank you for listening.